Welcome to the Exposure Magazine podcast from the heart of the British nuclear test survivor community.
A century of iron at Bovington. Welcome to Exposure Magazine's podcast. I'm your host, and today we're going somewhere extraordinary. Somewhere that smells faintly of engine oil, echoes with the rumble of iron tracks, and holds within its walls more than a century of human ingenuity, sacrifice, and armoured power. We're going to Bovington, Dorset, home to the Tank Museum. Now, when people think of a museum, they often picture hushed galleries, fragile artefacts behind glass, and politely worded signs asking you not to touch. Bovington is not that museum. This is a place where you stand in the shadow of a 50-ton German Tiger II, where you can peer inside the cramped hull of a First World War Mark I, and where the machines don't just sit there, they breathe history at you. The Tank Museum holds the world's most extensive collection of armoured fighting vehicles, AFVs in the trade, and it does something genuinely rare. It uses that extraordinary wall of steel to tell the story of how land warfare was transformed forever by the invention of the tank. But it does far more than catalogue machines. It asks what those machines cost in engineering, in tactics, and above all, in human lives. The museum sits right next to Bovington Camp, the operational base of the Royal Wessex Yeomanry, the unit currently tasked with providing battle casualty replacements for the British Army's armoured regiments. That proximity is no accident. Living military practice and historical preservation coexist here, in a relationship that gives the whole site a unique, quite remarkable energy. So, let's begin at the beginning. A century of institutional history. The story of the museum starts modestly enough, with a few tanks in a railed enclosure mentioned in the Tank Corps Journal in 1919. Just a handful of survivors from the Great War. Little Willie, the world's first tank prototype, alongside the Mark II through Mark V variants that had changed the face of battle at the Somme. By 1931, this informal collection had grown enough to be formally established as the Royal Tank Corps Museum, a proper institutional home rather than a school-adjacent curiosity. Then came the Second World War, which, somewhat ironically, closed the museum while simultaneously generating the very artifacts that would later fill it. When the doors reopened after 1945, an influx of Axis and Allied vehicles transformed the scope of the collection entirely. The 1970s brought the first major curatorial expansion, securing funding for what is now the Warhorse to Horsepower exhibit. Then, in 1990, something rather unusual happened. A Japanese scale model company helped build a museum hall. The Tamiya Hall, yes, named after Tamiya, opened as a multi-purpose space, a partnership between corporate enthusiasm for military modelling and genuine cultural heritage. Only in Britain, perhaps. The real leap into the modern era came in 2009, when Her Majesty the Queen opened the Tank Story Hall, introducing contemporary visitor architecture and a genuinely world-class interpretive framework. This was followed in 2014 by the Vehicle Conservation Centre, a dedicated facility housing over 100 AFVs, focused on long-term preservation, and in 2016 by new workshop facilities, opened by HRH Princess Anne, ensuring the operational upkeep of the museum's working fleet. What that trajectory shows us is the professionalisation of military heritage management in Britain, from a regimental repository to a premier national asset, driven by royal patronage, national lottery investment, and crucially, a genuine commitment to telling the story properly. Thematic exploration, from the Somme to the Cold War. Walk into the museum's main halls, and you immediately feel the pull of chronology. The interpretive framework here is deliberate and very well judged. It takes you forward through time, from stalemate breaker to Cold War Leviathan, always keeping the technology anchored to the tactical problem it was designed to solve. It begins, as it must, in the mud of the Western Front. The trench experience immerses you in 1916, the year tanks first went into battle at the Somme. Little Willie stands as the starting point, an experimental machine, ungainly and uncertain, but what it represented was nothing less than a revolution. For the first time, the deadlock of the trenches had a mechanical answer. From there, the collection walks you through the interwar years, the development of faster, lighter cruiser tanks like the A9, and into the full-blown armoured warfare of the Second World War. The World War II haul is, frankly, staggering. The Churchill Sefvi, the Churchill AVR with its petard mortar gun, a weapon designed to blast fortifications at close range, the M4A1 Sherman of 1942. All present, all extraordinary. And then there are the Axis machines, the Tiger II, the King Tiger of 1944, and beside it, the Jagdtiger, the heaviest fully armoured fighting vehicle ever produced in quantity during the war. These are vehicles that defined an era of escalating firepower, and standing next to them is genuinely humbling. Soviet counterparts are represented too. The T-34, the tank many historians argue did more than any other single vehicle to determine the outcome of the war on the Eastern Front. Then we move into the Cold War, and here the exhibit takes on a weight entirely different. The curation of the Cold War and post-war section is, for this programme's readership in particular, a critical touchpoint. Because the exhibit explicitly addresses what it meant to fight, or to prepare to fight, on a nuclear-active battlefield. British Cold War NBC suits are on display, nuclear, biological and chemical protection gear. The harrowing reality of armoured operations under the shadow of the bomb was made physical and immediate. The Centurion is displayed with a stunning technical cutaway that reveals its internal architecture in extraordinary detail. The Chieftain, the Bulldog. These vehicles aren't just engineering achievements, they're life support systems for the men who crewed them during decades of unprecedented global tension, when a conventional conflict in Central Europe could within hours become something unimaginably worse. The human element, memorialization and popular culture. Technical collections, however extraordinary, can become overwhelming without the human story to anchor them. The Tank Museum understands this and addresses it beautifully. The RAC Memorial Room, developed in partnership with the Royal Armoured Corps Memorial Trust, is perhaps the most quietly powerful space in the entire site. It commemorates approximately 13,000 soldiers who have fallen in service since 1939. Books of remembrance, a searchable digital roll of honour, video testimonials from those who served or from the families they left behind. It provides what you might call the human provenance of the machines outside. You walk back into those halls afterwards and you see the vehicles differently. But the museum is also unafraid to explore something more unexpected, the tank as cultural icon. The Tanks for the Memories exhibition traces the journey from military reality to popular consciousness, through toys, through games, through the remarkable phenomenon of Action Man and the decades of children who grew up playing with miniature versions of these machines, entirely unconscious of the histories those models encoded. That cultural reach is then extended into the present day through the gaming zone, where a partnership with World of Tanks, the hugely popular online game, bridges historical study and modern simulation. It's a genuinely clever piece of audience engagement, attracting a generation of visitors who might otherwise never set foot in a museum. Contemporary conflict, the Ukraine exhibition. History, of course, doesn't stop, and one of the most significant aspects of the Tank Museum is its willingness to engage with history as it unfolds. The newest installation focuses on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a live history exhibit that shifts and develops as the conflict evolves. It's a brave curatorial decision, and an important one. The exhibit charts the Royal Tank Regiment's role in training Ukrainian forces, a direct contemporary thread connecting Bovington to an active war in Europe. It incorporates the personal testimonies of Ukrainian refugees who have settled in Dorset, giving the broader geopolitical story an intensely human face. The armoured assets at the centre of this chapter are the Challenger 2, Britain's current frontline main battle tank, and the Russian T-72, the vehicle representing the opposing forces in the field. Two machines, two doctrines, one catastrophic conflict. The exhibit doesn't editorialise heavily. It doesn't need to. The steel speaks. Operational logistics and specialist facilities. Running a collection of this scale is, as you might imagine, a considerable logistical undertaking. Behind the public galleries lies an entire ecosystem of conservation, maintenance and operational support. The Vehicle Conservation Centre houses over 100 AFVs, many of them unique prototypes and testbed vehicles that represent developmental dead ends, technological experiments, or simply the vehicle's history left behind. Access to the VCC is subject to operational availability, so if you're planning a visit specifically to see what's held there, it's worth contacting the museum in advance to confirm. The workshops, opened in 2016, ensure that the museum's working fleet remains exactly that, working, because Bovington doesn't just display tanks, it drives them. The arena hosts live displays during Easter, May half-term, and the summer school holidays at 1 o'clock Monday through Friday, with expert commentary on manoeuvres and mock battles. Hearing and feeling a tank engine at full throttle, at close range, is an experience that no amount of written description adequately prepares you for. Universal access and visitor experience. The Tank Museum's commitment to inclusive heritage is genuinely impressive and worth highlighting. The facility incorporates ramps and lifts throughout, with dedicated disabled parking immediately adjacent to the entrance. Sensory and auditory support includes Type T induction loops on interactive exhibits, full subtitling on all video content, and Braille guides available from the information point. For visitors who require BSL, British Sign Language, interpreted tours, these are confirmed for the 31st of January and the 19th of September 2026, so do check the website if that's relevant to you or someone in your group. There is also a dedicated well-being room, a quiet space behind the museum shop for visitors experiencing sensory overload or chronic fatigue. It doubles as a private breastfeeding area. It's a small thing, perhaps, in the context of a collection of this magnitude, but it speaks to an institution that genuinely thinks about who walks through its doors. On the practical side, the restaurant overlooks the Tank Story Hall and is open from 10 until 5, offering hot mains, lasagna, curry, moussaka, alongside comprehensive dietary inclusive options, gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan. There's also a cafe by the soft play area, open from 10:30 to 4:30 year-round. Closing thoughts. The Tank Museum at Bovington achieves something genuinely rare. It balances technical depth with narrative flow and sensitive memorialization, without sacrificing any of those qualities in service of the others. For those of us with a particular interest in the Cold War era and the nuclear standoff that defined the second half of the 20th century, the museum offers a profound and, at times, quietly devastating reflection on the mechanical and human requirements of that extraordinary moment in history. To stand beside a Centurion cutaway and understand, really understand, what that vehicle was designed to do and who was asked to do it in, is to feel history not as abstraction but as weight. For the broader public, it's one of the finest museums in Britain. Full stop. The Tank Museum is located in Bovington, Dorset, postcode BH26JG. You can reach the visitor line on 01929 405096, the business line on 01929 408951, and find everything else you need at tankmuseum.org or by emailing visit@tankmuseum.org. Thank you for listening to Exposure Magazine's podcast. Until next time.
Thank you for joining us today as we bring Exposure Magazine to life. Like, subscribe and share for more great podcasts.